"We don't subsidize your hobbies, Maya." My father said it from the threshold of my print studio, arms crossed, coat still on, while the last of the evening light slid off the aluminum frames and left everything blue. Behind him, my mother held a garment bag high to avoid the puddle near the door, peering past me at the stacks of paper and the old Heidelberg press like they were the crime scene. "It isn't a hobby," I said. "It's payroll. It's rent. It's my entire life." The press hummed in the back like an old animal trying to sleep. Two of my employees were cleaning ink trays in the washroom, talking in low voices because they kept pretending they didn't hear the conversation out front. "We can't just pull 20,000 out of a hat," my father said. "Be realistic." He loved that word, realistic, the way some men love cigars. He'd puff it, and the room would fill with the smell of his certainty. "Like you were realistic last month with the venue deposit?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. 85,000 down, non-refundable, for a ballroom you can't pronounce, and a floral ceiling no one can even touch. My mother flinched, then schooled her face smooth. "Don't be petty. Your brother's wedding is one day in a lifetime. This is paper." Paper. As if the posters for the school charity runs, the funeral booklets I printed for families who couldn't afford glossy grief, the business cards for immigrant barbers who brought donuts at pickup, were nothing. As if the 100 tiny ways ink holds a town together didn't count because it couldn't be plated on gold. Before we go deeper, tell me where you're re-listening from and if you've ever had to choose between pride and survival. I'm reading every comment. Now, let me take you back to the story. I'm Maya. I'm 52. I own Line and Letter, a small print and design studio in the oldest strip on Hawthorne Avenue. I started it 15 years ago after a divorce and an exit package that should have scared me into a cubicle. Instead, I bought a beat-up press, painted the walls a stubborn white, and learned the names of every school secretary within 10 miles. If you've ever picked up a program with a misspelled principal S name at a spring concert and didn't notice because it felt good in your hands, that was probably mine. 2 months before this night, my brother Andrew got engaged to a woman named Kira, whose Instagram looked like a fashion shoot and whose laugh could glue a room together. They'd chosen a hotel downtown with a ballroom that used to be a train station, vaulted ceilings, brass rails, that kind of myth. My parents said, "Of course," when the planner read out the number. $150,000 between venue, food, string quartet, after-party lounge, storytelling fireworks. The way their faces glowed when they signed, you would have thought they were paying for a transplant. I needed $20,000. "Look at it like a bridge," I told them the night I asked. 2 weeks until the microloan posts. Our city bid for the park signage is pending, but I have to keep the lights on until then. If I miss payroll Friday, I lose Lena for sure. Maybe Hector too. I can't train new people in the middle of the bid. My father scanned the front desk. He picked up a sample invitation, thick cotton stock with blind debossing and a copperplate monogram, and turned it in his hand like evidence. "Pretty," he said. "But you know what else is pretty? Positive cash flow. You chose an unstable line of work, Maya. There's no bottomless family fund to bail you out when it dips." "There's not bottomless anything," I said. "Just the $20,000 I'll wire back the second the SBA funds hit. I'll sign a promissory note, interest, whatever makes you comfortable." "We're not a bank," my mother said. "And we're stretched. The wedding is your gift," I finished for her. I didn't look at the garment bag she'd brought to show me, the mother of the groom dress, midnight silk, still tagged. I looked at the press, at the neon Line and Letter sign that flickered every evening right as the streetlights came on, like a man clearing his throat, deciding whether to speak. My mother clicked her tongue softly, a sound that had trained me since childhood to make myself smaller. "You have to learn to accept your limits, Maya. You're always charging at windmills." Behind her, through the glass, a city bus sighed to a stop. Someone climbed down in a blue coat and hurried past, collar up. Life kept moving. "You paid $150,000 for one day," I said. I'm asking for $20,000 to protect 15 years. My father shifted his weight. He looked tired. Or maybe I wanted him to. We'll always be there for you emotionally, kiddo. But money? We can't jeopardize retirement. We're not 25. They left. The door hissed shut, and the bell gave that stupid, cheerful ring that always felt sarcastic at night. I watched their taillights disappear down Hawthorne until they blurred. Then I flipped the open sign to closed and stood in the dark with my hands flat on the counter, palms tingling, trying to feel the grain of wood under lacquer, something solid. "Boss?" Lena's voice from the back. "You good?" "Yeah," I lied. "Go home. See you at 8. She took her beanie from the hook, waved, and slipped out the side. I stayed, alone with the machines that have their own heartbeats if you've ever listened past the rush of ink and the suck of paper. I pulled out my ledger, the old-fashioned kind with green lines and a whisper of dust when you turn it, and I started a column titled Asks. Parents, January 11th. Loan requested, $20,000. Status, refused. Reason given. We not a bank. Banker, SBA, pending. 2 weeks. Landlord, January 14th. Grace requested, 10 days. Status. We'll see. Vendors, 3 past due notices. Coded sheets, ink, foil. I drew a line under it and wrote, Thursday, payroll. On the way home, I drove past the hotel. Up the steps, through the glass, I could see a rehearsal for someone else. The midweek weddings for people who didn't care if their anniversary fell on a Tuesday. Waiters in black moved like chess pieces. A florist on a ladder tucked white roses into a chandelier that looked like spilt light. I sat at the red for too long. Someone honked, and I rolled forward. The next morning, the timeline tightened. The Parks Department emailed. Our office is recommending line and letter for the signage package, pending proof of liquidity and ability to scale. It was the kind of sentence that should have made me dance. Instead, I opened a fresh spreadsheet and typed numbers so fast my fingers stung. If you've ever built something with your hands and your nights, you know the weight of that math. It's not numbers. It's names. It's who you have to call first if it collapses. At noon, my brother called. "Don't be dramatic," Andrew said. "You know how they are?" "How they are?" I asked. I watched Lena hand a stack of folded brochures to a woman in a red scarf and smiled automatically. "They paid for your wedding like you were founding a dynasty." I asked for a loan. "It isn't about amounts," he said. "It's about optics. They can explain the wedding. They can't explain funding a failing business." The word went through me like cold water. Failing? Maya. Come on. Line and letter is cute, but you've always, what's the word? Over-identified with your projects. I sat down because my legs decided without me. "I print your fiancé's brand kits," I said. "I stayed up until 3 last week, foiling that ridiculous copper logo because she changed her mind on the edge radius 12 times. "I appreciate you," he said brightly, the way people talk to servers when they want to sound gracious. "Listen, about the seating chart. Can you do something like laser cut acrylic?" Kira sent inspo. "Andrew." He paused. "What?" "I need $20,000, 2 weeks. I'm not asking you to be a bank. I'm asking you to be my brother." Silence. Then, "Kira's dad is covering the after-party furniture because Mom and Dad have done so much. It's complicated. You know how wedding budgets spiral. I'll send you the inspo for the acrylic." He hung up before I could pick which sentence would ruin us forever. That evening, Lena found me rewriting the park's bid letter to sound like a woman who slept. "You're gonna get it," she said without looking up from her WeTransfer window. "You always do." "Always is a big promise," I said. She thought I meant the contract. I meant standing upright. At home, I made the kind of dinner you make when your brain is arithmetic. Toast, egg, a handful of cherry tomatoes eaten from the stem like candy. I sat on the floor with my back against the couch and opened a shoebox I hadn't opened in years. Old proof pulls. The first business card I ever printed, misregistered by a hair but beautiful because I made it. A photo of my daughter Naya on a stool when she was 9, learning to feed the press. Fingers inked, grin feral. She's 24 now, in Seattle, writing code, calling me on Sundays to ask what S for dinner like I could send it through the phone. When I put the box away, my hands smelled like dust and ink and time, a better perfume than anything in the department store. The landlord texted the next morning, rent by Friday or notice Monday. The banker called at 10, cheerful, apologetic. 2 more weeks, he said. Backlogged. Sorry, Maya. At 11, my mother stopped by with cappuccinos and the dress bag again, second attempt. Try to be happy for your brother, she said, settling the cups on the counter like we were girlfriends showing each other shoes. He's waited a long time to find someone. Mom, I'm not unhappy for him, I said. I'm scared. She touched my cheek the way she used to when I was little and running a fever. You've always been dramatic about your ups and downs. I wish you would let a man take care of you for once. I hired 2, I said. They work the guillotine and the foil stamper. She sighed, because I was being difficult. Then she unzipped the bag and held the midnight silk up, the dress glinting like water in a cave. What do you think? I think it's beautiful, I said. And I think the seamstress who made it would like to be paid on time. Her eyes sharpened. Don't weaponize kindness, Maya. Don't rename money kindness and call it a virtue, I said. She recoiled like I'd slapped her. The bell rang. A customer came in. The world demanded we perform ourselves. My mother zipped the bag. Come to Sunday dinner, she said at last. We're finalizing menus. I'll make your favorite potatoes. We're finalizing eviction notices, I said, but I said it after she left. Friday came. Payroll wasn't optional. I paid everyone and watched my account empty like a lake in drought. I wrote the rent check and dated it for Monday and wrote a sticky note to myself that said, Lie, don't lie. I turned off the open sign and sat on the floor in the dark, back against the counter, same position as my living room. Different ghosts. I don't know if you've ever listened to a street after midnight when you are inside your livelihood and you don't know if you can keep it. The sound changes. The little creaks of the building feel like questions. The refrigerator motor in the mini fridge sounds like someone clearing their throat before bad news. At 1 a.m., I took out the ledger again and added a new column. Promises. Banker. 2 weeks. Andrew. Acrylic inspo. Mom. Potatoes. Landlord. Monday. I stared at the word until it lost shape. Promises aren't contracts. They're weather forecasts. Saturday morning, the Parks Department left a voicemail. We'd like to see your facility Tuesday morning, verify capacity, meet your team. I pressed my fingertips to my temple and felt my pulse knock against bone like someone asking to be let out. I went to Sunday dinner. The table was what it always is at my parents' house. Too much. Candles glowing like an apology no one wants to make. China that only recognizes good news. Andrew and Kira arrived late, laughing, wine-chimed with bracelets. Guess what? Kira said, breathless, sliding into her chair. We booked the ice luge for the cocktail hour. The what? I asked. For the signature martinis, she said. They drip through the sculpture. It's a whole thing. How much? The question leapt out of me. I couldn't stop it. She blinked. I don't know. Dad handled it. She turned to my mother. Is the salmon wild caught? I don't eat farmed. It's wild, my mother said, even though I saw the packaging in the recycling when I carried in the salad. We are a family that performs the life it wants, even when it can't afford the props. Halfway through the meal, my father cleared his throat. We have a small announcement, he said. Your mother and I have decided to host the after-party at the Penthouse Lounge. It's a once-in-a-lifetime thing. Daddy, Kira breathed, already crying. She's good at it, genuinely. I envied her, the way sincerity makes beautiful people look even more beautiful. I set down my fork. "Dad," I said calmly, "can I speak with you alone for a second?" He stared at me for one beat too long, then put his napkin down and followed me to the hallway. We were framed between family portraits, Andrew at 8 in a baseball uniform, me at 11 with a scraped knee and a lopsided braid, both of us unaware we'd be cast for the rest of our lives. "I need the $20,000 by Monday," I said. "The site visit is Tuesday. If I lose the shop, I lose the contract. If I lose the contract, the whole street loses our piece of that work. You like parks, right? You walk in them and tell strangers which trees you planted when you were 25. He rubbed his eyes. For a second, the father I loved, who taught me to measure twice and cut once, who made paper airplanes with me at midnight the night my appendix burst, surfaced. Then the man who gives speeches at club dinners about fiscal responsibility returned. He shook his head. "We can't, kiddo. Can't or won't. Both. And the $150,000. He held up a hand, the universal sign for stop being impolite. "Your brother's life has a trajectory," he said. "We're investing in that." I laughed. It came out wrong. "You think mine doesn't?" He didn't answer. He went back to the table to announce the penthouse lounge. I stood in the hallway and looked at the photo of myself at 11, that scab on my knee, that grin I wore back then when I believed adults were magicians who pulled solutions out of hats if you asked nicely. On Monday, I handed the landlord the rent check. "It'll clear Friday," I said. "Don't lie," he said gently. "It bounces. It's over." "I'll make it good," I said. I smiled the way women smile when they need 5 more minutes from the world. He folded, because people often do when you look them directly in the eyes and ask for decency. Tuesday morning, the parks team came. I had Hector and Lena polishing the press at 7 a.m., muffins out by 8, coffee by 8:30. I put on the navy blazer that I keep on a hook in the back and pretended it had always fit. The team arrived. Clipboards, steel travel mugs, the perfume of public office, hand sanitizer, and budget anxiety. I walked them through the jobs in progress, the proofs, the bin labeled, City Bid, Do Not Touch. They nodded. They asked about capacity. They asked about cash reserves. I told the truth, but with better lighting. When they left, the project manager, a woman with kind eyes and a chipped thumbnail, put her hand on my arm. "Your work is excellent," she said quietly. "You'll hear from us." When the door closed, my hands shook so hard I had to sit down on the floor behind the counter. My phone buzzed. A text from Andrew. Acrylic inspo attached. Need by Friday latest. A file with 8 photos. Icy cursive names glowing blue under nightclub lights. A caption that said, "Dollars but worth." I typed and deleted 3 replies. I put the phone face down. I opened the ledger and added a line under asks. Brother, January 23rd, loan requested $20,000. Status, no. Reason, optics. Then I turned the page and wrote a new title, in ink so dark it bled a little. Plan. I wrote 3 numbers, 20,000, 48 hours, $150,000. I don't know if you've ever felt something inside you click into alignment with such a quiet sound. It is almost a prayer. It is the moment a decision stops being a thought and becomes a place you can walk to. I packed my tote with the ledger, the bid packet, and a folder of invoices I couldn't pay. I locked the door behind me. The neon line and letter sign flickered and then came fully on in the noon light, stubborn and unrequired. I touched the glass. "Stay," I whispered to a thing that can't hear. "Just stay." I walked to my car. I drove toward a part of town where favors cost interest and silence. I had never gone there for myself. I had gone there once for a friend who needed to disappear from a loud boyfriend and left with a food truck lease instead. I am not proud of the stops we make when a future depends on it. I am only telling you my road as it was. On the way, the parks department called. I pulled into a bus turnout and let the ring crawl backward through me 5 times before I answered. "Ms. Rao?" We're pleased to award line and letter the park signage package, pending receipt of proof of liquidity. I shut my eyes. A car behind me honked. The city kept breathing. You'll have it by end of day, I said. Wonderful, she said. And Ms. Rao? The mayor's office will be at the signing. It'll be a photo op. A photo op. I pictured my mother cutting the salmon into exactly symmetrical squares on her Sunday plates, while the city posted me shaking hands with a man whose suit costs more than my rent. Optics work both ways. I put the car in gear and pulled back into traffic, the folder on the passenger seat like an extra organ. If you're still with me, breathe. Next part is the ledger turned into action, and a dinner where a new kind of menu is placed on the table. Tell me in the comments, what do you think proof of liquidity should look like to people who measured my future in optics? I didn't sleep the night after that conversation with my parents. I lay there in the quiet darkness of my small apartment, staring at the ceiling as the city hummed faintly outside my window. Their words kept replaying in my mind like a broken record. We can't risk our savings on your business. Your brother's wedding is once in a lifetime. It's not personal, Maya. It's just priorities. Priorities. That word dug into me like a splinter I couldn't pull out. For years, I'd been the reliable one. The eldest daughter who didn't complain. The one who looked after Dad when he had his surgery. The one who took the kids on weekends so my brother and his fiancée could have their time. And yet, when it came time to choose, they wrote me off like I was some reckless dreamer asking for a handout. I remember whispering to myself that night, almost like a vow. Fine. You've made your choice. Now I'll make mine. The next morning, the world outside didn't care about my sleepless night. The sun rose anyway, the emails poured in, and the unpaid invoices on my desk stared back like silent accusers. I brewed the cheapest coffee I could find, sat at my kitchen table, and opened my laptop. Step 1, find another way. Banks had already turned me down twice. My credit was good, but I didn't have enough collateral for the short-term line of credit I needed. The amount, $20,000, wasn't enormous, but it was make or break for the parks contract. I started calling everyone. Former suppliers, small business associations, even an old college friend who'd once offered to invest someday. Most conversations ended politely but quickly. People sympathized, but sympathy doesn't sign checks. By noon, I had one promising lead, a woman named Carla Mendoza, who ran a small community lending program for women entrepreneurs. I'd met her once at a networking brunch 2 years earlier. She'd told me to keep her in mind if I ever needed a bridge loan. I needed more than a bridge. I needed a miracle. So I called. Carla remembered me right away. She asked sharp questions, numbers, projections, contract details, and she didn't waste time with fluff. When I told her about the city parks deal and my parents' refusal, there was a pause on the line. Then she said, I like fighters, Maya. Email me your proposal and meet me at my office tomorrow, 9 a.m. sharp. Don't be late. It wasn't a guarantee, but it was the first crack of light in a long, dark tunnel. That evening, I drove to my parents' house. No, not to argue. I needed to pick up some paperwork I'd stored in the attic years ago, a file box with early contracts and tax returns. As I pulled into the driveway, I saw fairy lights strung across the lawn. Dozens of folding chairs were lined up in neat rows. A white archway stood near the rose garden, draped in gauzy fabric. They were hosting the wedding tasting that night. I hadn't been invited. Through the big kitchen windows, I saw my mother bustling around in a silk blouse, giving instructions to caterers. My father stood with a wine glass in hand, laughing with a man I didn't recognize, probably someone from the groom's side. And there, in the center of it all, was Ryan, my younger brother, his arm around his fiancée Chloe, both of them glowing like this was their personal fairy tale. I grabbed the file box from the attic as quietly as I could, but as I was walking out, I heard it, clear as a bell. Maya's just jealous, Chloe's voice floated through the open window. Honestly, who starts a business without a backup plan? Ryan chimed in. She's always been a bit impractical. Then my mother with a soft sigh. She's strong. She'll figure it out. She always does. I stood frozen on the porch, box in hand, listening. I'd never felt so simultaneously visible and invisible. They expected me to figure it out so they wouldn't have to help. That was my role in this family. The one who survives alone so they don't have to get uncomfortable. I walked back to my car without saying a word. But my chest burned the entire drive home. The next day, I put on my sharpest blazer, the one I usually reserved for pitches, and drove to Carla Mendoza's office. It was a modest space above a bakery downtown, filled with plants and the smell of fresh cinnamon rolls wafting through the vents. Carla greeted me like an old friend, but her eyes were sharp. She flipped through my proposal quickly, asked about my revenue streams, my timeline, the park's contract terms. I answered everything honestly. No embellishments, no sob story, just the numbers, the plan, and the grit. Finally, she leaned back and said, "You've got hustle, Maya. I like that. But I also need to know, can you handle this pressure? If I give you this loan, I expect you to deliver." I met her gaze. "Carla, if I don't deliver, I lose everything. So yes, I'll handle it." She smiled, slow and deliberate. "Good answer. I'll call you in 48 hours. Be ready." I walked out of that office feeling something I hadn't felt in weeks. Hope. Over the next few days, my life became a tightly wound routine. Mornings were for follow-ups with the parks department and suppliers. Afternoons were spent reviewing budgets, polishing the logistics plan, and preparing contingency schedules. Evenings were for knocking on every possible door, looking for micro-investors or partnerships. I worked until midnight almost every night, powered by instant noodles and sheer willpower. Meanwhile, my family's wedding obsession reached a fever pitch. My phone buzzed constantly with group messages I hadn't asked to be part of. Photos of floral arrangements, voice notes about seating charts, a video of Chloe trying on her $8,000 gown while my mother cooed in the background. One evening, I finally broke and muted the group chat. It was either that or throw my phone out the window. Then came the family dinner. My parents invited me to a casual dinner one Sunday night, saying it had been too long since we'd all been together. Against my better judgment, I went. A part of me still hoped, ridiculously, that maybe they'd change their minds. The house was buzzing when I arrived. Caterers were packing up from some pre-wedding tasting. The dining table was already set with their fine china. Ryan and Chloe were there, glowing as usual. My parents greeted me warmly, almost as if nothing had happened between us. We sat down to dinner, and for a while, the conversation was harmless. Work, weather, wedding details. I gave polite answers, focused on my food. But then Ryan leaned back, grinning, and said, "So, Maya, did you figure out your little money problem?" The table fell quiet. My fork froze halfway to my mouth. "My little money problem?" I repeated slowly. Chloe laughed, a light, tinkling sound that made my skin prickle. "We just meant, it's good you're resourceful. You'll figure something out. You always do." There it was again. That expectation, that dismissal. I forced a smile. "I'm working on it," I said, keeping my voice steady. "I have options." Ryan shrugged. "Well, I mean, not everyone can afford to risk 20 grand on a whim, you know? Some of us have responsibilities." I stared at him. This was coming from a man whose wedding had a gelato bar and a live string quartet. "Right," I said. "Some of us do." The rest of the meal was a blur. I smiled when appropriate, nodded when required. But inside, something cold and steady was settling. A decision. 2 days later, Carla called. "You've got your loan, Maya. $20,000. Interest is 5%, 12-month term. I'm taking a calculated risk on you. Don't make me regret it." I nearly cried right there in my office. But instead, I exhaled slowly and said, "Thank you, you won't." With the funds secured, everything moved fast. I finalized the park's contract, placed supplier orders, and hired a temporary team to help execute. I lived on black coffee and adrenaline. For the first time in weeks, I wasn't just reacting, I was building. The city signed the deal officially on a Thursday afternoon. I remember holding the stamped contract in my hands, feeling the weight of it. This wasn't just paper. This was my second chance. That weekend, the engagement party took place. I wasn't going to go. But my mother called me personally, her voice warm and insistent. "It would mean a lot to your brother," she said, "and to me." So I went. The party was held in a rented garden pavilion, strung with fairy lights and filled with expensive champagne. Chloe floated around in a white cocktail dress, and Ryan basked in the glow of attention. My parents worked the room like proud hosts. And me? I stood near the back, sipping sparkling water, watching it all like a movie playing on someone else's screen. That's when I overheard it. Chloe's cousin, a woman I'd never met, leaned toward her and whispered, loud enough for me to catch, "I can't believe she showed up. Isn't she the one who asked for money?" And Chloe replied with a half smile, "Yeah, she's persistent. I'll give her that." Persistent. As if I were some pesky inconvenience, not a woman fighting to keep her business alive. I didn't confront them. I didn't make a scene. I just filed it away, quietly, carefully. Because the time would come, and when it did, they'd remember this moment differently. The last scene of that night burned into my mind. As the party wound down, Ryan raised a toast. He thanked our parents for their incredible generosity, praised Chloe's family for their support, and ended with, "We're so lucky to have people who believe in us." People clapped, glasses clinked, and in that moment, I felt utterly alone and utterly determined. They didn't believe in me, but soon, they'd depend on me. And when that day came, I'd make sure they understood exactly what my little money problem had built. It's strange how life moves on when you stop waiting for people to catch up. The night of Ryan IS engagement party was the last time I allowed their opinions to cut me. I went home, shut the door, and made myself a promise. I won't need their approval. I'll build something so solid that when they come knocking, I will decide the terms. And that's exactly what I did. The park's contract wasn't just a lifeline. It was the spark that lit everything else. One successful project led to another. Within a year, my business had secured maintenance contracts for 3 more municipalities. I hired more staff, upgraded my equipment, and moved operations out of my cramped apartment into a real office. I didn't tell my parents much. They never asked. Occasionally, my mother would text something polite. "Hope you're doing well, dear," usually sandwiched between wedding photos or vacation updates. My brother, meanwhile, rode the wave of married life like a prince. Their wedding had been a spectacle, $150,000 of glittering lights, designer suits, and imported champagne. I went because I couldn't give them the satisfaction of my absence. But I stood in the back, alone, watching them dance under chandeliers my business could never have afforded at the time. 2 years passed, and everything changed. My business didn't just survive, it thrived. I landed a multi-year city contract worth 7 figures. I hired a strong management team, streamlined operations, and invested wisely. By the 3rd year, I wasn't hustling for survival anymore. I was running a company that competitors were watching closely. I bought a modest house, not to flaunt, but to finally live without fear of eviction. I took a real vacation for the first time in a decade, and most importantly, I learned to enjoy the silence of not needing them. Then came the phone call. It was a Thursday evening when my mother's name flashed on my screen. I hadn't heard her voice in months. I almost ignored it, but something in my gut told me to pick up. "Hello?" Her voice was shaky. "Maya, It's Mom. We need to talk. I leaned back in my chair. What's going on? It's your brother, she said. Ryan's having some financial difficulties, serious ones. I didn't respond. I just let the silence stretch. She rushed to fill it. His company collapsed. There was some mismanagement, lawsuits, debts. He lost almost everything, Maya. And now the bank is foreclosing on their house. They need help. There it was. The knock I had been waiting for. I kept my voice steady. Why are you telling me this? Because, sweetheart, she said, her voice breaking in a way that once would have shattered me. You're doing well. We know you've built something incredible. We're proud of you, Maya. Truly. And Ryan, he's your brother. He needs family now. Family. The same family that dismissed me when I needed $20,000. The same family that strung fairy lights and toasted their good fortune while I lay awake doing math at 2 a.m. I exhaled slowly. What exactly are you asking me for? Mom hesitated, then said it. They need $90,000 to keep the house. It's temporary. Ryan will find his feet again. We all just thought maybe you could help. I smiled. They didn't hear it, but I did. Let me think about it, I said. I'll get back to you. I didn't get back to them for 2 weeks. During that time, the calls multiplied. Mom called, Dad called. Even Chloe, my perfectly polished sister-in-law, left me a voicemail filled with carefully measured humility. They were unraveling. I could practically feel the anxiety through the phone. Meanwhile, I did my homework. Ryan's business collapse wasn't just bad luck. It was negligence. He'd sunk most of his money into an expansion that failed, then refused to cut losses. When loans piled up, he turned to my parents for help. They gave him everything they had left. And when that wasn't enough, they mortgaged their house to cover his mess. Now the bank was knocking, and the only person left with the means to help was me. The universe has a funny way of circling back. When I finally called my father back, his relief was almost tangible. Maya, thank God, we were worried you wouldn't answer. I've been busy, I said coolly, running that impractical little business of mine. There was a pause. He swallowed. Yes, we've underestimated you. Your mother and I, we're proud, truly. And Ryan, he's learned a hard lesson. We were hoping, well, we were wondering if we could meet. As a family, talk about options. Fine, I said. My office, Saturday, 2 p.m. I could almost hear him exhale. That Saturday, I prepared carefully. Not like someone about to give a handout, but like someone hosting a board meeting. I printed bank statements, contract summaries, and a short financial disclosure about their situation that I'd acquired through public records. I laid everything out in a neat folder on the conference table. At 2 p.m. sharp, they arrived. My parents looked older. My father's confident posture had been replaced by a kind of fragile dignity. My mother's eyes were tired, her hair streaked with gray. And Ryan? He looked nothing like the golden boy of the wedding. His expensive watch didn't shine the same way when the man wearing it was desperate. Maya, my mother said, reaching as if to hug me. I stepped back. Sit. They sat. I remained standing, hands resting lightly on the folder. For the first time, I wasn't the daughter begging for help. I was the woman they'd underestimated. My father started. We know things weren't handled well in the past, but this is different. Ryan made some mistakes, big ones. But he's your brother. We're asking for your help. I tilted my head. Help. That's interesting. I remember asking for help once. Silence. I asked for a $20,000 loan, not a gift, a loan. And do you remember what you told me? No one spoke, so I answered for them. We can't risk our savings. We have priorities. Ryan shifted uncomfortably. Maya, that was years ago. Yes. And it's amazing what a few years can change, isn't it? I opened the folder and pulled out a copy of the mortgage foreclosure notice. Your house goes to auction in 6 weeks. You owe $90,000 to clear the debt. My father's jaw tightened. We were hoping. I know what you were hoping, I interrupted softly. But before I decide anything, we're going to have an honest conversation. Finally. I placed a photo on the table. One from Ryan's wedding. Him and Chloe under the $5,000 floral arch, grinning. This cost more than what I asked for, I said. Then another photo. The cake, the gelato bar, the string quartet. Each one a receipt without numbers. You told me no, but you said yes to all of this. My mother's eyes filled with tears. We made choices, maybe the wrong ones. No, I said. Not maybe. Exactly the wrong ones. And now you want me to clean it up. Ryan finally spoke, his voice tight. Maya, this isn't about the past. This is about helping your family. I met his gaze. Family? When I needed help, I wasn't family. I was a burden, a risk, a punchline at your engagement party. His face paled. He remembered. Then, slowly, I slid a check across the table. It was real. Dated that morning. $90,000. My mother gasped softly. Ryan leaned forward, his eyes lighting up. But I raised a finger. Before you touch it, I said. There are conditions. My father frowned. What kind of conditions? Simple ones. First, I want to hear you say it. All of you. Out loud. You chose Ryan's wedding over my future. You had the money. And you refused me. My mother sobbed. My father stared at the table. Ryan clenched his jaw. I waited. Finally, my father whispered, We chose wrong. We had the money, and we refused you. And because of that, I continued, I nearly lost everything. My mother wiped her eyes. We're so sorry, Maya. Truly. I nodded once. The second condition. Once this check clears, we are done. No more calls, no more birthday texts, no holidays, no favors. You wanted me out of your plans back then. I'm granting that wish now. Permanently. Ryan's mouth fell open. You can't be serious. I'm dead serious, I said. You take this lifeline on my terms, or you walk out that door and figure it out yourselves. The way I had to. They looked at each other. A silent, desperate calculus passed between them. Pride versus survival. It didn't take long. My father picked up the pen. They signed the agreement I'd prepared. Essentially, a no-contact clause tied to the financial transfer. No legal tricks. Just honesty, in black and white. As they walked out of my office, check in hand, I felt nothing but clarity. No guilt, no triumph. Just balance. For years, I'd been the one waiting outside their world, asking for entry. Now they were the ones leaving my space, humbled, and I closed the door behind them. Months later, I heard through distant relatives what happened. They kept their house, but their reputation cracked. Ryan never bounced back. His business career was over. My parents withdrew socially, retreating from the circles that once adored them. And me? I kept building. Quietly. Purposefully. I didn't do it for revenge. I did it for peace. They made their priorities clear years ago, and now I simply made mine. Thanks for joining me.